Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is Panos here from LearnWorlds. Thank you for being here. We just need a few seconds to start broadcasting. Hope everybody's fine. Feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know in the chat box of Zoom where you're logging in from. Also, if you like a couple of things about yourself, what's your occupation, what's your interest in this today. We'll start in right a few seconds. I see more and more people logging in. Today, we'll be discussing about the ethical and legal implications of AI in learning design and content creation. And we have a great panel for you. Hopefully, you will enjoy the content and you will find it very, very useful. During the chat, during the webinar, feel free to ask your questions using the Q&A box of Zoom here. We'll try to flag as many questions as possible and answer as we go or at the end of the webinar. We also have Alex and Luca from LearnWorlds customer support team in the chat. So if you have any other questions or any other housekeeping items, feel free to ask there, and our team will be there to help you out. So let me start sharing my screen, and we'll open up our cameras to properly welcome you guys. Hello, everyone. Panos here, and we have Vasya and Noah with us. We'll probably introduce you to them right away. Allow me to start sharing my screen. So here we are. I hope you can all hear us all right, and everything is working fine. If you need anything, just feel free to ask for assistance in the chat. As I mentioned, I'm Panos. I'm the co-founder and CEO here in LearnWorlds, and I'm super happy to be hosting this this webinar. We have two experts with us today, and together we'll be discussing about the ethical and legal implications of artificial intelligence in learning design. This is obviously a very hot topic. It's changing rapidly, it's accelerating rapidly, both how we use AI and generative AI in our day-to-day lives and what this means for society in general as we are trying to adapt and as the institutions are trying to adapt to this reality. So here we have something that is growing at a very fast pace, artificial intelligence, and the legal and the ethical reflexes of our society that usually move in glacial speeds, and these two forces now are here colliding. So we are I'm sure that we're going to have a very lively discussion here and some great takeaways for you. We're going to discuss some considerations about the content generation part of artificial intelligence and what it means both in terms of the legal and the ethical aspects, where we are starting from an intellectual property angle, but we are also trying to tackle during our discussion more things that are around this space. And hopefully you will leave this webinar more informed and also with some practical takeaways that you can hopefully put to practice as you double with these technologies, as you use generative AI to develop content, to help you with your researchal design, or to do other kinds of creative work with AI. So without further ado, allow me to introduce my two co-panelists here. We have with us Noah Weisberg, who's the co-founder and CEO of Juva. He's been working with AI and also the legal space for many, many years. He's using now Juva, his company, is leveraging AI to help businesses understand their documents. So we will have in a bit, Noah will introduce himself and tell us more about Juva and also his view on what we're discussing here today. And also, I'm super happy to be hosting Vasya as well, our internal legal counsel, who is also dealing with AI issues as part of our day-to-day work here with LearnWorlds, and also herself, she's studying and excelling in her job. So let's start, I guess, with the first part of the presentation, where we will be discussing. We're starting from the intellectual property angle and see where today's discussion will take us. So Vasya, the floor is yours.
Okay, so we have prepared a very interesting and hot topic that will take much of our time in the foreseeable future. And the goal for this first part of our webinar is to find what is the minimum human input for copyright protection in the EU and USA. And why is that? We believe as an LMS platform that this will help creators understand how to secure copyright over their...
Sorry, Vasya, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm not yet seeing your screen. Is it sharing? Because I'm seeing a loading sign, and I'm sure some of our people are also seeing that.
It says that screen share is paused.
But let's try again so that people can see it from the beginning.
Absolutely.
For a second.
Yeah, these are things that are usually happening in live presentations. I hope some AI is not trying to block us here.
Like technology is hard to build well. This is something I think we've all learned too well.
Unfortunately, I have the same, that the screen sharing is paused for some reason.
I can go on and share, because obviously, like, we have access to the share presentation. So let's hopefully it will work better. So I'm sure that some AI is not very fond of you right now. So here we are.
I don't see the presentation. I'm sorry about it, but it's okay. If anyone else can see the presentation,
let me try again. Is it any better?
No. See the presentation?
Yay, we have it. Sorry for this, folks. Yeah, Vasya, you can continue. We are on the webinar objective slide.
Okay, great. So again, sorry for this. Our goal of this first part of this webinar is to explore what is the minimum human involvement required for a literary, scientific, artistic work to be eligible for copyright protection when the creator is using a generative AI tool. So why is this important? Because this will help creators understand how to secure copyright over their work and how they can ensure they can financially exploit their creations. Because you can expect the creator to devote a substantial amount of time, and at the end of the day, not having the right to treat it any way they want. Let's move to the next slide. And let's go back to basics and define intellectual property and define its branch, which is the copyright, a branch of intellectual property that is copyright. So IP refers to any creation of the mind, any kind of literary work, invention, design, music composition, software, you name it, and comprises a group of different legal rights that protect such creations and inventions and allowing creators to have control over the use of their intellectual labor. Both the EU and US have long-lasting systems for IP protection that comprises of copyright, trademark, trade secrets, and patents, and via a variety of conventions that have taken place. Elemental features in copyright that we will address today are to a great extent similar both in the EU and US. And let's proceed. So now copyright protection. Why copyright and not trademark or anything else? It's the kind of protection that most in this audience probably seek as creators. Either you have decided to write a comic book, or you have decided to open your online school and you're creating content. So it is important to understand how this work can be protected. So you need to have an original and creative work. And if copyright is granted to you, you will have protection over it for the span of your life, plus 70 years afterwards. And if there is a work for hire involved, we're talking about the entire, again, life of the author, plus 95 years. There is the fair use doctrine, where you can use, and this is important when you input, when you insert, and when you create prompts and insert them in the AI generative tool. There's the fair use doctrine, where you can use, there is a limited use of copyright material where you don't need to ask for permission. And the most important part of copyright protection is the control and the rights to the control you will have over your work. These rights and this control spans over the reproduction of your work, making of derivative works once you have completed your initial work, how you decide how do you distribute your work, how you publicly display, and how you can perform your work in the public realm. Essentially, the same stands in the EU. It's the next slide. It's exactly the same, because again, there are conventions that have harmonized how copyright protection functions to facilitate the work of creators. I will not take more time to analyze this, because essentially it's the same. There is a lack of fair use doctrine, but there is a similar concept embraced, and you can use copyright that is unlicensed for specific use cases. And now let's move to the more interesting part, that is the copyright protection under the use of AI. So we have decided to analyze a recent case, Zari of the Dawn, for those of you who might have heard it. And for those of you who don't know what this is about, Zari of the Dawn is a comic book that was created by Christina Castanova with the use of Midjourney only for the image part. And this case explores extensively whether works with AI-generated content can qualify and enjoy copyright protection. What happened in this case is that Christina Castanova indeed created this comic book. She created the text all on her own without any AI help, but she used extensive prompting to use the images with the use of Midjourney. So once the comic book was completed, she submitted it to the US Copyright Office for protection. And the US Copyright Office indeed granted protection. So from her point of view and from everyone's point of view, this was a historical decision. But the US Copyright Office was not aware that the images were created with AI. So once this was made public, the US Copyright Office reopened this case and proceeded in further assessing it and rejected full copyright protection. The main reason was the insufficient human involvement in the creation of the images. It was historical, though, because up to an extent, it granted copyright protection in the comic book, meaning the text that Christina Castanova all on her own had created, and the arrangement of the photos, the images, and the storyline. So despite the fact that there was AI involvement, it found a way to grant protection to the elements of the comic book and the comic book where human involvement asserted control, and rejected protection to the elements where the images were created by the AI, as it found that there were a significant distance between the input, regardless of the fact that it was extensive, and the output that was created. So what was the process that was followed? The important, the crucial element to understand here is that the US Copyright Office, when I examined the specific application for the second time, used the specific criteria that was Midjourney merely an assisting instrument, or at the end of the day, actually conceived and executed a work and not followed instructions. That is not feasible at this phase, and we will see it afterwards. Midjourney cannot follow specific instructions. It cannot understand human language. So the elements, the concept of establishment of control and distance became central and crucial for this case, but for every case following. So let's proceed and understand here that copyright is inextricably linked with human authorship. And this is applicable both in the EU and US. Both regions require human creativity and originality at the core of the creation process in order to allow work to enjoy copyright protection. So they phrase it in a different way, but the gist is the same. Authors must be humans, at least so far, at least up until now. Because copyright law at the end protects the fruits of intellectual labor, and this can be granted only to humans. And by the way, I have this lovely macaque in this image, because there was another case. This is not a photograph by a human. This is a photograph, this is a selfie taken by the monkey. And there was an entire case where it was examined whether copyright protection can be attributed to the monkey and rights can be given to the monkey via a petition by PETA, the animal activist organization. We were not aware of the outcome of the court. We were only aware of the outcome of the US Copyright Office, where again reasserted the fact that only humans can enjoy copyright protection. Likewise, in the next slide, we will see that the Court of Justice of the European Union has declared on various cases that copyright only applies to original works. This is exactly the same in both jurisdictions. It's important to keep that in mind. So a bit more practical, let's see some key factors that affecting copyright protection. And they're inextricably linked with AI. So control, the element of control. The unpredictability that comes from the AI outcome deprives the creator of the crucial element of control. And that results in the weakening of the authorship claim. What this means is that the human cannot directly, as mentioned before, cannot directly instruct the AI generative tool to produce a very specific income. So it cannot be considered as a mere tool like a photography or a knife or a brush or anything else. It's something beyond that. The degree of human input is essential. To be granted human right protection, you absolutely need to assert the most degree of human input you can insert in your work. And apart from that, you need to ensure that the material you use to train the AI that will produce later the outcome, you need to be certain that it is copyrighted and will not open you to any liability that someone else might come and say you are infringing my intellectual property rights. And you need to do the boring work as well to check for contractual terms and see where the liability lies. Does it lies in the creator for copyright infringement, or it goes to the provider of the AI generative tool? So it is also very important, we have determined it's also very important to understand in the next slide why Midjourney and similar AI content generators are considered unpredictable and thus depriving, when you're using them, of your chances to receive copyright protection. There is a level of degree of there is a very complex model. This complex model operates through vast neural networks. And what it does, when you insert your input, it does not understand the language. It just reads words, that words are transferred into tokens, and the tokens are linked to data from the pool that each AI content generator has in its disposal. And you have the output from this lake and not from the exact instructions that you have provided. And this is directly linked to element number 3, randomness in the process. I have tried it myself. And when you use identical or semi-identical prompting, you yield different results. You get different results. That is due to the probabilistic nature of the model and its inability to understand exactly your vision and your instructions and work merely as a tool. And that is why you can influence it in a limited extent so far. But the more prompting you use and you ensure that it's copyrighted, the more you ensure that the work can be considered as yours. And let's close this presentation with some practical considerations for AI-assisted creations, for when you write an article, a blog post, you create a video, you name it. So you always need to ensure that you take charge of the creative direction. You always need to ensure that you have a clear vision in your head. And once you have the outcome, you make final revisions to depict what you had in your mind. Essentially, your intellectual labor transferred into a tangible format. And you need to document your involvement in the creation process, that you have this idea and you want to execute it, and you have taken this steps towards it. And you need to use the AI as a tool and nothing more. You need to remain the primary creator, not say, okay, I have this idea for a book, so can you write me 3 chapters? 3 chapters are certainly not to be included in the copyright protection that you will seek if you want to use financially your labor, your intellectual labor. You also need to go through to use a plagiarism check tool. You have written a blog post, you have written an article, you have used AI up to a certain extent. You need to use a plagiarism check tool to ensure that the outcome is indeed yours and it does not infringe any third-party intellectual property rights. Apart from that, you need to give credit where credit is due always, and you need to do a citation check, as you will see in the next slide. You will need to do a citation check and insert that citation. And you need to again do the boring work and check the terms and conditions and ensure that at least the AI provider that you will use is clear that the outcome and the intellectual property of the outcome belongs to you and will not challenge it or dispute it in the future, in any future case. As a very positive outcome, the EU AI Act has established transparency requirements. This transparency requirement will also help creators understand firstly how the AI tool produced the outcome and what process was used, what method, and if the data received are indeed not infringing any third-party intellectual property. So they could build their case and prove that they have actually inserted that amount of control required by the US Copyright Office and the respective EU authorities, and grant the so much desired protection. So that's it from me, from the aspect of copyright. But I believe it is also essential to go into a deeper discussion now around bias, the matters of bias, and how bias can be inserted to such work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vasia, for the intro. I believe that with this presentation, you have opened up many questions from the beginning, from what tools we are using and how these tools have been trained, all the way to the how we use an AI as an assistant next to us as part of the creative process. We all understand that this is very new ground here. It's still the legislation is trying to catch up with what is happening in the real space. again, we are talking here mostly about the Western view in what AI does and how it should be regulated. We have the EU and the US, but we understand that we are not the only ones on the planet. And there are other AIs and models right now that are being created with different cultural and political and legal considerations. So what we're talking here, it's mostly from our own point of view, within our own societies and within our own economies, and the things that we can regulate, the things that we can, where we can enforce copyright. And this is where I guess Noah is, why Noah is here, because he will start, we will engage in this discussion to understand what else are we missing. Vasya came with her presentation with some very specific and very rational guidelines in the end that we have also seen from a creator's point of view make sense. If you just ask generative AI to create an article with you, for you, or to create an online course for you, or to create an ebook for you, it will come back with very generic, very bland, very median, very mediocre content. Where it excels is if you have your creative ideas, or if you use it as a sounding board to get some ideas, to give it some guidance. And if you give it some guidance, then it can become a rocket ship that can propel your productivity. It can help you accomplish so many things so much faster. So it seems that these guidelines make sense not just from a legal point of view, but also from a creative point of view on how you can get some good results. Noah, what is your sense as an expert, having worked with AI for so many years? How do you stand on these issues?
So much to say, right, on all this stuff. In terms of and I should add here, I was once upon a time a lawyer, but I think Vasya is much closer to legal practice than me. I have been building legal AI software since about 2011, and I've also written some books on AI for lawyers and AI in general. But in terms of the IP issues, I think Vasya is our closest expert here. I think in terms of AI as supplement versus replacement, that's something we could go on with for a long time, but there are obviously, and I think a lot of you who are on here realize that AI can be pretty helpful in your work. There's lots of interesting intellectual property issues. Like one set of interesting intellectual property issues is what Vasya was highlighting, right? That like is something that you create with the help of AI, is that copyrightable? Another really, really, really interesting question is about the AIs themselves and whether those AIs were built in a way that maybe raises deeper problems. So effectively, a lot of the AIs like Midjourney or Stability or OpenAI, it's kind of hard to tell on some of these, but the general belief is that these systems were more or less trained by sucking the entire internet in and training on them. In fact, some things like the EU Transparency Act should give us a little bit more insight into how these things actually were trained. But right now, probably a fair guess that most things on the internet were sucked in. There's sort of two issues with that big vacuuming up of data. One issue is copyright, right? That in fact, a lot of these things that we're trained on, the trainers may not have had the rights to train on these systems, right? And so there's like a lot of question over whether it's a fair use, a transformative use to take this data that's freely available on the internet and convert it into something else, like training data and the output into an AI model, whether that's legitimate or not. And I think courts are in the midst of deciding that. The other really interesting question is, even if it's okay as a copyright fair use matter, a lot of websites have terms of use on them, right? So this is like a contract with the user that says you're allowed to use my site for this, you're not allowed to use it for that. Some of those sites had terms of use that said you couldn't train AI on it. Some of them said it explicitly in more recent years, but if they were older, probably no one was even thinking about the idea that you might vacuum up the entire internet and use it to train on. And so they're less explicit, but maybe still do the trick to prevent. And so you get questions about whether those terms of use apply, right? Because there's some places that think that a contract, like someone should have to enter into a contract, and just going to a website isn't enough to make it apply. There's other jurisdictions that are more strict on that. But if those terms of use apply, there could be problems as well. And so then for the people on here, unless you work at OpenAI, and even if you work at OpenAI or Cohere or Stability or whatever, there's like the Vassia-esque people that you work with who have to deal with that problem. But for you, probably most of you are more users of AI. And so you don't have to worry about as much whether OpenAI or Cohere did something wrong when they train their AI. What you have to worry about is, does that mean anything for me? And so the worst kind of possible situation is that someone like OpenAI is found to have not trained their system properly, and there's a whole ton of liability there. And then not only is there liability for OpenAI, but then people who have claims against OpenAI might try to bring a claim against people who use OpenAI's technology. And we've seen that kind of play out with other sorts of things, like people maybe have heard of random lawsuits happening against people who used fax machines and stuff like that.
Usually in patent law, in things that you have never...
Exactly.
You have been the hapless user of something that has been patented somewhere else, and then somebody comes and haunts you.
Totally, but you can imagine situations that aren't that weird, like using Midjourney, and I assume the other systems. Getty Images has a case right now going against. Actually, is it Midjourney? Is it Stability? I think it's Stability, actually. Getty Images has a case against Stability right now where they go through and they say, produce me a picture that looks, so Getty Images is a large database of images, right? Like we could get an image of 3 people on a webinar talking or something like that. And they would put this up and it would have a caption that would say, here's 2 dudes with not too much hair and a girl or something like that talking about AI. And what Stability is accused of doing is going and copying that entire database and making it so that someone who is using Stability can actually get prompts that show Getty Images images, almost, in fact. And if you, like one of the people on here, were to go to Getty Images and copy one of their images and put it into one of your presentations, like there's no question that would be wrong and Getty Images could go after you. So the only question is, if you go and create a presentation and that presentation has what should be Getty Images content in it, but just as moderated through Stability or OpenAI, does that sort of free you from liability? And I think probably the answer is we don't know yet. I think there's probably a level of safety in it if you're using, like many vendors will have provisions in their contracts. And you should look at, say, what something like the Learn World contract says, or whatever piece of technology's contract says about how they handle things like intellectual property issues. Like if there is an intellectual property issue, do they indemnify you? Do they, on the other hand, say it's all your fault? Do they say they'll replace the IP if things have gone wrong? And that's something you probably feel like looking at, because there is the potential to do things that could get you sued using Gen AI. And the fact that you're using Gen AI, I don't think protects you from it.
Well, it's a problem that is becoming bigger every day, because most people here have used, and let me just also, since we're at it, I wanted to launch one of our a poll here to understand how people are using now or planning to use AI in their work. So this problem is becoming bigger every day that passes by. We are creating so much content. There's so much content out there. So the genie is probably already out of the box. And I guess the average user here cannot really, even if they read all the terms, so many times of all these different companies, it's probably impossible for them to understand whether they are protected or not. So should and there is also there are so many models out there now that are a bit like open source. People can just go out and use them. So according to should people go to an established vendor? Are they more protected if they sign up, let's say, for the professional version of ChatGPT? We're not here to promote any vendor, obviously, but is this something that gives them an extra sense of protection? And also, because you've mentioned before the training, it's not just that these tools, these models have sucked all the content that they could from libraries, open source content. They crawled all the websites that they can find, but to this day they're being trained by the content that we upload, but we still upload every day. So should we just go, like, if one can afford it, obviously go with the professional version that at least gives you some protection of your content not being used to this day to keep training the platform, and you at least have a sense of privacy with the content that you upload, so that you don't find your company finances, training other stuff, or at some point generating an answer that you wouldn't like to be out there.
You got to decide based on yourself, right? Like if you are a company, I was just looking through Vasya did her nice presentation. I was looking through a bunch of the chat things, and it seems like there's just a diverse range of users here. If you work at a university, like if you're actually in education, maybe it doesn't matter so much and you don't need the protection of your own IP. On the other hand, if you work at a company, maybe some of the internal information that you'd put into a presentation that you'd use LearnWorlds to help you develop might be more something you need to protect. And so I think you got to decide yourself how important it is to protect. And if it is important for you to protect that stuff, then you need to make sure that you're using technology that helps you protect that. That may or may not, like you may be able to accomplish that for free, right? Like there are ways to opt out using ChatGPT of data collection and stuff. So you don't necessarily have to pay, but I do think you have to think about it if confidentiality is important to you. In terms of like, should you roll your own AI or something like that? I think that, is beyond the technical capabilities of some people. And I think you can probably get a pretty good deal on the technology itself from a vendor. So I probably think for most people, rolling their own AI isn't right. I also think you actually, I think, are in some ways more exposed to liability if you're creating your own AI, whereas if you're going through a vendor and the vendor is indemnifying you, that may itself have a level of value for you.
What makes
Sorry, Vasya, we're not
hearing
you.
Your sound is poor.
Yeah, could you please repeat?
Sorry.
Now it's better?
Is it better? Okay. So unless someone means, Noah, that they have inserted that amount of input in the chosen AI, that they have essentially created their own sub-product where the rules of the provider still apply, but the prompting is so extensive that they have created essentially a new product based on the needs, like an online tutor, let's say, that they have inserted that amount of input and they have created a whole new product. Again, you're absolutely right. If the question was about creating entirely your own AI, this has technical limitations, I guess, and opens you to more liability. Absolutely agree with you. But if they mean that they will do that extensive prompting so that they will create their own AI product, a separate AI product, then again, the terms of the AI provider apply, but additional terms will need to be inserted when someone offers this additional product to its users, to its customers. So it depends.
This still doesn't answer what happened with the original training, because all these AIs have been trained, and that's something that we have seen not with AI, but we have, let's say, some parallels in the history of technology. When Google was first around with their crawlers, going all around the web, copying everything, getting all the pages, reading all the pages, creating models of its own, or when it started scanning thousands of books and libraries out there. This created a whole set of novel questions where the legal system and politicians had to jump in and interpret what this means. What is the level of fair use? And we are probably going into this some of the same decisions that will have to be taken eventually. And we may have decisions that a photo taken by a monkey is not an original work, but I'm not sure that we will get the same kind of questions when having an AI generating something at some point. So the lines are not very clear. They are clear to us now, but they're getting increasingly more blurry down the line. So one of the questions is the question of the training of these AIs, and here is also the ethical questions of how these data have been provided. There is a whole chapter of questions around the ethical aspects of this training. Humans have been used for tagging millions upon millions of images that have been used to train all these models. Some of them under very hard labor conditions. We're talking about workers in third world countries where they had to go through exhaustive work hours and even being exposed to very hard images that they had to be specifically tagged, and they have been traumatized by this kind of experience. So it's a different kind of question, but even people talk about some kind of colonialism of AI, where we have these large companies that are using the hard labor of menial workers who are going through millions of images, painstakingly manually tagging all these images so that we can get a product in order to generate a new meme or to generate a new funny image. So, and also there is even the question of what all these AIs have been trained with, because it's a different thing to train an AI based on the kind of content that we have, let's say, in the public sphere. It's a different thing if you train an AI on a dark web, and we have seen that some of these AIs have consumed content that is at least spurious or dubious, let's say, in its origin. And we even have AIs that are now being trained through under different, let's say, political systems or political regimes, and in entirely different languages. So there isn't even any kind of English-speaking content or obviously other languages that are underrepresented. So here we are having somebody who is becoming the co-author of our content. Here we have in our poll people who are saying that they're going to use it for creating content with text and images and videos and designing courses and materials. And we know very, very few things about what is the origin of this content, and what are, let's say, if we anthropomorphize, what's their ideas, what is it thinking, and how it thinks about the things that we wanted to teach. So this is where Vasia's original key points about us maintaining control, us guiding the creative process, and asking the generative AI to elaborate, to expand on our ideas, not just to come back with the original, creating something from scratch. And Noah, how do you see the corporate world using AI? Because this is, if it's scary one time, for the average user, it's also very, very scary for companies who are using AI as part of platforms and are trying to offer these kinds of services to the general public.
Well, so one thing I was thinking about as you were talking is just there's definitely risk here. Should people not use AI because there's risk? Like, I understand for you have a feature, like someone can build a presentation not using AI, or you can use AI and it'll help you build a presentation more quickly. Should you not use that because you're worried about the risk? Because I think all of us on here, I think, Vasya, I assume would say that we don't know what some of the risks are yet, right? That there's definitely potentially legal liability here. It's not totally clear where courts are going to come out on this stuff. And so if you use this stuff right now, you're definitely taking some risk. Does that mean you should, right, Vasya? Like there's risk.
I agree. There is risk, but as I guess you will say, there is absolutely no reason not to use it. But as Panos said, there is an absolute reason to know what you're doing and to have a clear vision. So if you have that, a clear vision, know what you want and know your subject matter, then you will be able to establish that you have used AI as a tool.
And I think the thing is basically along those lines, like there's real benefits to using this technology. There's definitely risks, but there's risks in lots of stuff. And I think a lot of other people are kind of going through those risks, and you still, the technology is quite amazing. Like it can do fantastic stuff for you, enable you to do work to like using our software. If you need to review contracts, you can do that 2 or 3 times as fast, right? I would imagine as you would if you were doing it manually. Right? So if you need to review a lot of contracts, it's really good. I think if you're trying to put together presentations, you use the LearnWorld's AI feature, you're going to be able to put it together quicker, right? Like if you're writing a blog post, I find using GenAI can be helpful. Like I don't use it alone, but there's spots where it can be a really nice helper in doing that type of stuff. And I think by using that, I think you just make yourself faster. And so there is a risk, but you're also able to do a lot more. And if you choose to not do as much, there's also risk in that. So
you got to use it mainly as a tool. When you use it for syntax and for grammar and stuff like that, of course, it's clearly established that you use it as a tool and nothing more. It starts getting complicated when you insert promptings like let's create a bicycle with that kind of colors, and let's create a bicycle that talks and does this and this and that. So this is where it gets more complex. But another issue that we absolutely need to tap on is the matter of bias. And as Panos said, these generative AI tools have been trained on data that might come from anywhere. So bias is definitely inserted there. And it is important because it is not yet clear to establish some ground rules to be able to detect that kind of bias, or to be able to, I don't know, to have legal grounds to be able to report that kind of bias that you have stumbled upon, and be able to exclude it from your work.
I think, with bias, I think ultimately at the end of the day, you as the person giving the presentation, as the person preparing the presentation, as the person speaking, as the person who's the author of the piece, you're putting it out. And you need to think about what's like, is the final product something that seems okay? And there's multiple ways to get bias. Like one way to get bias is to, like these systems are just trained off stuff that humans created, right? So some of the things that they were trained on, may not be representative. Others of them may say things that are problematic. And I think you as the author need to think about what you're saying. And at the end of the day, that's the best check against bias, right? That just check what's in there, recognize that there is a possibility that what the system's saying may not be what you feel like saying, and don't just say it because the computer tells you to do it, but actually think about it.
So again, with bias, we are anthropomorphizing and assigning to the AI an inherently human characteristic. So we accuse it of something that we are guilty ourselves, because if it is biased because of the content that we fed it with. So there again, we come back to the personal responsibility of the output that we get, the creative output that we get out with AI, and of our involvement and our direction at any step with any generative AI. There's a very lively discussion happening in the chat. Here, many people obviously are like different options coming, and everyone here, I think there's already a bias in the sample. It's a proponent of AI. We're all thinking about it. We're all trying to think about the risks that some of these we uncovered today. But the goal here is not to scare people away. Is to make you aware. Is to make you more informed. And this is going to be definitely an ongoing process. The state and the laws are trying to catch up. Europe, the European Union was among the first to go out with a framework, let's say, for how we can make the AIs more ethical and more transparent, how we can understand things that probably might not even have a technical solution yet, but still, they're trying to do it. So we're here to say that we don't want to scare people. We are here to make people be informed. We are definitely proponents of using generative AI, and we have repeatedly said that you will not be replaced by AI, but you can certainly be replaced by someone who is using AI and has taken the risk of creating content using AI as part of his creative work and his workflow. So go in and use it, but also in the way that we have tried adding AI within the Learnworlds platform. It's an assistant. It's a tool that doesn't come up on his own and start generating either content or learning units or responses to users, but there is very strong prompting framework that is based on your content and is based on your direction, and it helps you to create the output that is very, very relevant to everything that you have put into the system and to the kind of, and you give it the direction. So this ensures a level of human input. And there you are obviously responsible for the outcome. So if at any point of this creative journey, you detect bias, you detect mistakes, you detect hallucinations, you detect things that are not proper or that are misattributed or potentially copyrighted material that shouldn't be out there and it has been used. It's probably extremely difficult to detect something like that, but you never know. Then you need to control the output. You need to stop this. You need to not use it. If you have the facilities to report it and get back the control of your you become again the director. You take control of the authoring and creative process. And incidentally or not, this is also what ensures that what you create is unique, it's personal, it's creative, and it's also probably copyrightable as far as we can tell, at least today. For some kinds of uses, you might not care if the material is copyrightable. You might just want to publish something out. It might be a quick Instagram post or something on Facebook, something on LinkedIn. You want to churn a quick article, so you might not bother. But still, you should take the responsibility of the output that you instigated or you generated with the help of AI. So you should use it. You should use the same standards for the things that you create and you put out there under your name. And this is where I guess the barrier of the creativity becomes even higher, because we will be flooded in the next months and years with generative AI content. Or this is already happening with the emails that we are getting, with the kind of content or courses or articles. There will be many people who will not bother and who will just ask a generative AI to create a course for them. It's going to be crap, the same way that ebooks that are being generated out there, or articles or websites or even movies. And these things were happening even before AI. These things will probably multiply. So as creators, as instructional designers, as entrepreneurs, as professionals, we need to set the bar even higher to direct any kind of creative process that is under our control, so that we give it the uniqueness, the creativity, the essence, the value, the human character, even if multiplied and if accelerated with some generative AI help, so that we can have unique quality and valuable output for our audiences. This is, I guess, the best at least if I can summarize my own current perception around the topic. So let me just to help propel the discussion as we are going to the final minutes. This is another poll where just after we've had this discussion and the very lively chat, let's see from our audience about what they think are the biggest challenges for creators using AI today. So I'm sure that today we're just opening the topics. We are not able to give definite answers. As you can understand, this is something that will keep us busy for the next few months and years. And what we promise is that we keep on engaging with experts in the field, like Noah, like Vasya, and trying to get back to you with what is the state of the art and what we see out there happening in this industry in generative AI, and how we try to include to introduce AI within our platform in as ethical way as possible.
Pano, based on what you've said, there is a great question from Lucy, and it says, how do you know whether content is AI generated? Should people label whether they have used it to help create content or graphics? So sometimes it says it's scarily good at mimicking brand ads. That is very absolutely correct and right. We see it in fake news, we see it in images created nowadays to show facts that are not facts, essentially. So for the ethical creator, yes, and for the creator that seeks copyright protection, that yes, you will absolutely need to disclose the content that is AI generated when you seek protection, and explain how this content has been created. This goes for any ethical content generated that uses AI. But of course, as Pano said, this is not black and white. There are cases that you will not be able to be certain whether the image or the text is AI generated, and that you will need, as Pano said, the bar is higher. You will need to do sometimes your own research. You will need to figure out if this information is applicable to you, and if this is indeed the correct information, or if it is an AI product that it was hastily thrown up to you.
So I guess going with reputable providers, vendors for any kind of software can be a protection. Again, we don't know. A large part of the battles, I guess, in AI, in technology, and who will dominate are going to be played in the legal field, probably around copyright, around how these models have been trained in the first place. Some of these, I'm sure that all of them originally started with just random content out there. So probably there is some harm done that cannot be undone. And we probably have to wait, or we might have to wait for the next generation of AIs that from the very, very beginning will start to be trained with different principles on content that has been very carefully vetted and provided out there. So what we have now is probably genies that are already out of the box, multiple genies. Some of them we know, some of them we probably don't know or haven't met yet out in the wild. And as we mentioned, there are probably, I don't know, other countries right now building their own generative AIs, which even have vastly different purposes and ethical standards than the ones we are trying here to debate. This goes a bit into the science fiction field, but what we are seeing in terms of getting output of generative AI, it looks like science fiction to what we had 10 years ago. So we are probably not too far off that. Noah, did you want to comment on something?
So much to say. I think with the generative AI stuff, the worrisome thing, if you're running a generative AI company, like an actual provider of generative AI technology as opposed to someone who leverages it, which none of us do. I think the legal implications of stuff, a court finding that your system was improperly trained, is pretty crushing, right? Because as Panos was saying, there was so much past harm done that you could imagine things going very wrong. Don't know if that'll end up happening, but it could. And maybe it won't be as bad as I think. But anyways, for all of us, I think the genie, as has kind of been mentioned, is sort of out of the bottle, and like whether there's an actual problem with how some of the current generations of AIs have been trained. I think eventually people will figure out a way to do this. Like the outcome of getting these systems trained is pretty incredible, right? As any of us who've used this technology have probably seen.
It is incredible. The outcome is incredible, and this is what we're trying here to do with as part of LearnWorlds with the resources that we have at our disposal. We strived a lot to understand how generative AI works, not out of the box, not just sprinkle some AI on top of a product and say that you are AI ready. We worked a lot with prompt engineering to understand what the instructional designers need, what our customers would need to have AI as a sidekick next to them so that they can multiply their efficiency and their productivity. But they have to start from something. They have to give in their own direction and their own ideas. And I guess we're trying to do, this is also why this webinar, we're trying to do the responsible thing, to be informed, to see what are the trends, what are the challenges, what are people, as you can see here, what are people feeling as our biggest challenges. And what I can promise is that we will keep investigating, we will keep sharing with the community what we learn, what are the evolutions, what is the evolution in the space, and keep working with experts and reputable vendors to give you solutions that you can use right away. There's a big first mover's advantage if you are there using these tools. As we said, if you are not, somebody else is using it and probably it is not caring for the things that you care. So we have to do it in an ethical and responsible way, and we have to do our best to use this as a tool in order to not to be replaced and to keep our creative standards, our quality standards, and our ethical standards at a very high level. So here, just mentioning the results of the poll here, many people who were trying to understand, and they see a big challenge, as all of us, to understand the evolving legal landscape. Again, here we're having the legal profession and science and politics that is evolving at a glacial pace, trying to adapt to something where every 3 months we have a huge new technology or release coming out and really unvoiding and really unsettling things. People are trying to one of the challenges, the next biggest on the poll here, is that IP laws are not keeping up with AI technology. Hopefully you got from us today a couple of key points that can help you create your own personal framework of how you direct your work and how you can keep your level of human input while getting the benefits of the efficiency and the productivity, and also avoiding the ethical pitfalls, which is a much bigger discussion in everything we do. I'm sure that educators here are very conscious about this thing. We may not be able to control the biases and the ways in which these AIs have been created, but what we can do is try to enforce our ethical standards and try to clear our biases at our level, at where our input and our direction is coming in. So hopefully today, with the help of Noah and Vasya, you got some at least some food for thought. I believe there was lots of that. I feel a bit uncertain about the outcomes of this, but this is it. This is reality. It's messy. We are at the frontier of the evolution, and we're trying with you to explore these things with smart and expert people to help you navigate these same ideas. So, any parting comments from you, Vasya and Noah?
I think that we have opened a huge discussion that will be interesting, to follow up on subjects, on the subject that we have tapped on. So from my side, I think we have a lot more things to discuss, and it's a discussion that needs to take place.
And thank you, Vasya, for the content. Thanks, Noah, for coming with us and exploring all these difficult issues. I know your time is very valuable, so we have to thank you a lot for this, for being part of this and helping us discuss these ideas. Just something to share for you. This is a little limited offer for people who have signed for this webinar and who have been with us today. If you are right now creating your next course or your first course, or you want to play with a platform that is including a generative AI functionality, and we're trying to do that in a responsible and ethical way, and to give you the direction, but also the acceleration that AI can bring. This is a little coupon that you can use until for the next 15 days. So feel free to head over to our website, start a free trial, no credit cards required, no strings attached. And in a couple of minutes, you will be in an environment enabled by OpenAI's API, by ChatGPT. So you can start creating your own courses and explore some of the things that we discussed here today, how you can add your own direction, your own creativity, and get a course that is going to have your imprint, and it's going to be also copyrightable, by the way, that you can just start sharing and selling right away. So that's it from me. I would like to thank you all for being part of this webinar. I hope you get some great food for thought. Thanks to our team, to Luca and Alex and Filipa and Vasiliki, who helped with the content. Obviously, thanks to Vasya and Noah for being part of this experience today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.